One form of female violence that's particularly intriguing as well as concerning is that of filicide. So, filicide refers to the murder of one's own child, and a child is defined as any human being under the age of 18 years old. So, filicide's particularly shocking when it involves a mother, for reasons discussed in terms of rates of female violence, but also in that it challenges cultural ideals of femininity and expectations of motherhood, right? Mothers are expected to be infatuated with their child, to do everything they can to protect them. So the thought that they might kill them can be quite shocking to the public. And in return, as a result, it garners a great deal of media attention. Now, there's various forms of filicide. So filicide being the broad term to refer to children of all ages. And then there's neonaticide, which you should be familiar with from the podcast assignment. Right? Neonaticide involves the killing of an infant that is under 1 day old. And then there's also infanticide, which is the killing of an infant. So neonatal, just like in the hospital, right, refers to the babies that are very, very young, in this case specifically 1 day or less. And infanticide involves an infant, and infants are defined as anything under 1 year. So the risk of filicide is greatest for a child during the first year of their life, but it decreases from there. I mean, the definition includes both biological and step parents. So it doesn't just have to be your biological son or daughter to constitute filicide. So filicide constitutes 1/3 of all infant deaths that are caused by injury per year in the U.S., which is a shocking large amount, right? Remember, infant being less than 1 year. Approximately 3 to 5% of all homicides annually are filicide. And most often the child is killed with personal weapons, which involves things like punching, kicking, beating, choking, drowning, shaking, any sort of harm that can be caused without an additional weapon. And firearms become more common as the child ages. So although the risk of filicide overall decreases, the risk of being shot by a parent increases with age. And as you should see based on those numbers, that filicide is a lot more common than people think, right? Nearly 500 children per year are killed by their parents, which is a staggering large number of children. In filicide, though, what's interesting about it is that, unlike other forms of violence, women are almost nearly as likely to be involved as men. So, unlike assault or homicide in general, which is largely dominated by male offenders, filicide involves women almost 43% of the time. The sons are the most likely to become the victim of filicide, with fathers being responsible for killing sons in about 30% of cases, while a mother kills her son in about 22% of filicide cases. And then a daughter is less likely to be the victim of filicide, with about 20% of the cases involving a mother killing a father, or mother killing a daughter, and 18% involving a father killing a daughter. So this brings us to the question, why on earth might a woman kill her child? Well, one of the first reasons, and probably the one that people think of most, is that there's something seriously wrong with a mother. She must be psychotic. Well, in some cases, yes, that is indeed the case. Sorry, I'm opening my soda, y'all. Roll with it. In cases involving psychosis, there's typically no rational motive, right? We have a very difficult time understanding why on earth a mother would do that. Well, sometimes this does involve postpartum depression. So let's pause here. What is postpartum depression? Postpartum depression is depression that is triggered by pregnancy and then childbirth. So it looks chemically identical to depression that occurs, generalized depression, but it is specifically caused by pregnancy and childbirth. And one of the things many people often mistakenly believe that it only affects mothers, when in fact it can also affect men. Okay, it's triggered by the experience and the fears and anxieties that come with having a child. So other reasons why a woman might kill her child, this one can be much harder to understand. But if you know what altruism means, altruism is doing something for others out of the kindness of your heart. So to think why a mother would kill her child from the kindness of her heart, it seems very backwards. But what this often involves is a woman who is killing her child because the child is suffering some sort of terminal illness that will cause them to experience a painful death, or they are trapped in a very abusive relationship, and she feels like she can't get out, and so she thinks she's protecting the child. Now, we may all look at this and go, well, of course that's not the right thing, but this type of filicide you have to understand from the perspective of the woman involved. Okay, and yes, sometimes this does include some form of psychosis, so they can overlap, but sometimes it doesn't at all. A third reason is that they simply just did not want the child. The woman did not want to be pregnant in the first place. There's usually no mental illness involved, and it's a very selfish decision. Okay, Angela Giesbrecht, who was discussed in the podcast, would probably fall under this category. She simply just did not want the children. So the fourth reason why a woman might kill her child is this one is not so much on purpose, right? They didn't mean to kill their child. However, long-term neglect, assault, or abuse results in the child's death. So this can be understood as a form of fatal maltreatment, a fatal child maltreatment. And finally, the fifth reason is that she's using it to get revenge on someone. It's most often on the other parent, right? Where you think we're going to get a divorce, well, fine, then you won't get the kid either. Or you think you're going to get full custody and take my child from me, I'll show you, right? It's not a healthy, common way to think, but it doesn't mean it doesn't happen, right? And these 5 forms were determined based on a review of a bunch of various cases of filicide, and these were the themes they determined among those cases. So who's affected by filicide? Well, not surprisingly, the child that loses their life, but also the spouse of the offender, right? Any siblings that they might have, the child who was killed might have, and oftentimes the offender, especially in the case of a mother who kills her child for altruistic reasons, right? She may believe she's doing the right thing for the child, but that doesn't mean she's not missing that child, or she doesn't hate that happened. This also involves the community at large. I mean, it shocks the community, not just the immediate community, but also spanning out from there. And another group of victims in cases of filicide that get overlooked are other children at school. So in the slides that I've shared with you, you can see a link to a case about Victoria Martins, who was killed by her mother and her. It's kind of a very convoluted case, but the long and short of it is her mother's boyfriend and his friend ended up killing this young girl. But I found this, and I thought I would share it with you, that this was from somebody whose daughter went to school with the kid, with the girl, Victoria Martins, who was killed. And you can just see here this, how the school is recognizing how this might affect the child. So while the school recognizes it, so often we as the public and the society overlook these innocent bystanders who often experience a great deal of trauma. Not to mention the teachers at the school, right, who had her in class. They're largely going to be experiencing a lot of grief as a result. So some filicide in real life, there's a number of cases that are particularly noteworthy, but we would be remiss to not cover the story of Andrea Yates. So Andrea Yates is probably the first case of filicide to really capture America's attention.